Time for Eye on Africa. Coming up, more violent scenes in South Africa. The student protesters keep up the pressure on President Zuma. France 24 talks to a key witness to one of the bloodiest and least documented episodes of France's checkered history in Africa. In the DRC, tourism bosses launch a bid to attract visitors. The rare species of gorilla, the potential star attraction. Start with South Africa and another day of clashes between police and students in the capital, Pretoria. That as demonstrators continue to voice their anger over the cost of higher education. President Jacob Zuma, who's under pressure over enduring inequalities 2 decades after the end of apartheid, has appointed a special team in a bid to defuse the situation. I asked correspondent Tim Butcher how much trouble Zuma's in.
This is another battlefront, and he's being attacked on all sides here. He has a finance minister, which is causing him problems. He's got issues with the public protector, who may well end up with him on criminal charges for corruption. And now the students are rioting on a massive scale, the worst we've seen in this country since the end of apartheid in 1994. So this is a major challenge to Zuma and his government.
And in terms of those protesters, in terms of enduring inequalities in the education system, they have a point in a way.
They absolutely do, and there's a very legitimate claim here that people who don't have an enormous amount of money are suddenly being charged 12% more for next year's university fees. Well, that's the threat for 2017. That's a substantial sum of money. So they have a legitimate claim in a country which prides itself on offering education and, in theory, free education to all. But sadly, of course, it's not their voices that are being heard. It's a few in the mob who are throwing the stones and causing problems. So we've had some nasty incidents of looting. And it's been remarkable scenes here in South Africa to see rubber bullets being fired on university campuses. If you're as old as me, you can cast your mind back to the last century and to the struggle against apartheid, and there's some terrible echoes there. So there's legitimate claims for, let's get education sorted, let's finance it properly, let's get it fair, let's not overcharge people. There's a danger that those sort of sound reasons and sound voices are going to be lost in the maelstrom and the mob.
Tim Butcher in Cape Town there. Well, meanwhile, South African prosecutors say the country's finance minister could ask for a review of a decision to charge him with fraud. Pravin Gordhan, a vocal critic of government waste and corruption, is accused of misconduct over a retirement package paid to a colleague back in 2010. Well, he says the allegations are politically motivated and orchestrated by supporters of President Zuma. Investors reacting positively to today's news after fears that the man in charge of the country's struggling economy is about to be sacked. Elsewhere, intense fighting in Libya, where forces loyal to the country's UN-backed government say they're advancing against the last remaining Islamic State strongholds in the city of Sirte. Jihadists are being chased out of late leader Muammar Gaddafi's hometown with the help of US airstrikes. The fight built as part of efforts to bring unity to a nation which has been deeply divided since Gaddafi was killed in 2012. Burundi's parliament has voted overwhelmingly in favour of a plan to withdraw from the International Criminal Court. Comes months after the ICC said it would investigate the human rights situation in the country after more than a year of deadly violence since President Pierre Nkurunziza's controversial decision to pursue a third term. No nation's ever pulled out of the ICC before. Hague-based body's African critics say it's unfairly targeted the continent. Cameroon next, and an account that sheds new light on one of the least documented controversies in France's former empire. In the 1950s and 60s, tens of thousands of people were killed as French and government forces fought rebels. Now a key witness has given his first televised interview to France 24 about what's been described as France's Mau Mau, a comparison to the way British authorities put down a rebellion in Kenya.
We meet Max Bardet in a remote village in southwest France. This former French soldier was sent to Cameroon between 1962 and 1964 in the Bamileke region. He was a helicopter pilot and witnessed several massacres committed by the Cameroonian army. It was strongly supported and funded by France. The army targeted members of the UPC, a party that opposed President Amadou Ahidjo. The UPC believed that after independence in 1960, Ahidjo was simply France's hand-picked puppet. For the first time on television, Max Bardet describes the atrocities he saw.
They had to finish the men off, but not the women. They just let them die like that. They shot the women with Kalashnikovs and also cut off their breasts and disemboweled them.
et il les éventrait.
During these massacres, Max Bardet was accompanied by a French officer.
Ce que voulait voir cet officier qui était avec moi,
The officer who was with me
il y ait surtout pas
did not want anyone
comment dirais-je,
to be able
gens
to
qui
say
puissent aller raconter
that
ça,
France was involved in
et
this
qu'on
whole
puisse
thing
impliquer,
because there were
justement,
still French
il y
soldiers
avait
there at the
encore
time.
quelques militaires français, qu'on puisse impliquer la France dans ces affaires-là.
A new book on this topic called The War in Cameroon has just come out.
The French were very discreet. They planned the operations but didn't have a heavy presence on the ground. They repressed the UPC movement but also all the civilians suspected of supporting the UPC. So it was a discreet, secretive repression. In France, no one knew about these military operations. Discreet but extremely violent.
In Cameroon, some still remember the massacres of the 1950s and 60s. Tade Yemelong used to be the bodyguard of one of the UPC's leaders.
It was a devastating war. They bombed places and didn't care if women or children lived there.
Tade Yemelong fought for many years in the Bamileke region against the French and Cameroonian armies. He was badly wounded.
I fell in a hole after we were ambushed. Then I went to hospital.
Now some Cameroonian NGOs want to ask for reparations from France for its role in this war. A discreet one, but one in which tens of thousands of people were killed, according to French and Cameroonian historians.
In South Sudan, President Salva Kiir scotched rumours of his death with a pickup tour of the capital, Juba. The reports had added to tension in the country as the UN warns of mounting violence. It says it's being denied access to affected areas. South Sudan descended into war in 2013, just 2.5 years after gaining independence. Numerous attempts to shore up a subsequent peace deal have failed, with renewed clashes breaking out in July. Finally, to the Democratic Republic of Congo, where authorities are trying to develop tourism. There's one part of the country's wildlife its hope will attract visitors from all over the world, gorillas. Our correspondent Thomas Nicolon spent a week in the Kahuzi-Biga National Park, home to a rare subspecies, the eastern lowland gorilla, which has just been classified as critically endangered.
You can't get any closer to Grau's gorillas in the wild than at the Kahuzi-Biega National Park. At the heart of this mountainous jungle, trackers follow 12 gorilla families every day, guarding over them.
I see myself as one of them when I'm in the forest like today. It's a population that I like very much. When you observe them closely, you see that they have the same attitudes as us human beings. We must be conscious of the luck that we have and have a strong professional awareness to protect them.
More than 200 rangers crisscross the park every day to protect the gorillas and secure the area. It's a risky task, but it is vital to both gorillas and humans.
We're in a post-conflict area. There are still many armed groups here and there, but the Congolese government made efforts to stabilize the area. Tourists are very well looked after when they come. They spend a lot of time in the forest without being at risk.
Tourists come from DR Congo and abroad to observe this rare and endangered subspecies. They return home delighted, and they all recommend this unique adventure.
I live in DR Congo. The country's reputation is not very good, but really people don't know the marvels that one can find here.
With more financing, the park could increase conservation measures and try to save Grau's gorillas from extinction. Protecting our remote relative could be a step in bettering the region's economic development, helping to spearhead the recovery of a nation hit by waves of violence over the last few decades.
That's it for On Africa. Do stay with us here on France 24.